Welcome back, Coinology. In the fascinating world of coin collecting, there are some coins that rise far above the ordinary, coins that take what we think of as pocket change and transform it into something legendary, something that collectors dream about owning, and one of those coins is none other than the 1983 1-cent coin from the United States of America. This coin, which to the casual observer might look like any other penny you could find rolling around in a drawer, sitting in a jar, or tossed onto the floorboard of a car, actually hides an incredible story of design, history, controversy, rarity, and astronomical value. When we talk about this 1983 1-cent coin, we are not just talking about a single piece of copper-plated zinc or copper alloy, we are talking about a piece of American history that has been catapulted into the spotlight of numismatics, with certain varieties and rare versions being valued not just at a few $1,000s, not just at a few $1 million, but at an eye-popping $334 million, a number so huge that it almost sounds like fiction, and yet, collectors, dealers, and enthusiasts know that when it comes to rare coins, reality can sometimes be stranger than fiction. To understand why the 1983 penny has captured so much attention, we need to go back in time, to the early 1980s, when the United States Mint was making a major change in the very fabric of the nation's smallest coin. For more than a century, the penny had been made primarily from copper, a metal that gave the coin its warm reddish-brown glow and its iconic look. But in the late 1970s and early 1980s, the price of copper began to rise dramatically on the world market. The cost of producing a penny made almost entirely of copper was becoming more expensive than the face value of the coin itself, a situation that the government could not allow to continue indefinitely. So, in 1982, the United States Mint made the bold decision to change the composition of the cent. Instead of producing it from nearly pure copper, the mint began to strike pennies from a core of zinc, coated with a thin layer of copper plating to give it the same appearance as the older coins. This change meant that the penny of 1982 and beyond was no longer the same coin that Americans had carried for generations. It was lighter, it rang differently when dropped, and most importantly, it marked the beginning of a new era in the history of the 1-cent coin. And now, the year 1983 was the first full year when the United States Mint produced pennies entirely from the new copper-plated zinc composition. Every single 1983 cent, whether struck at Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco for proof issues, was officially supposed to be made from this new formula. The weight of these coins was 2.5 grams, compared to the older copper coins which had weighed 3.11 grams. This difference may sound small, but for collectors, it is enormous, because weight is one of the primary indicators of a coin's true composition. And this is where things begin to get really interesting, because while the United States Mint declared that number 1983 cents were to be struck in the old copper composition, mysterious examples have turned up over the years showing that at least a handful of 1983 pennies were, in fact, struck on leftover copper planchets. These coins, weighing 3.11 grams instead of 2.5 grams, are among the rarest and most valuable modern coins in existence. A genuine 1983 copper cent has sold for tens of thousands of dollars at auction, and some speculate that in private sales or under the right circumstances, one of these ultra-rare examples could command values in the hundreds of millions, especially given the feverish demand that exists for legendary numismatic rarities. The design of the 1983 cent is another reason why it holds such an important place in American coinage. On the obverse, or front, of the coin, we see the enduring image of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, whose profile has graced the penny since 1909, when the coin was first redesigned to commemorate the centennial of Lincoln's birth. Sculptor Victor David Brenner created this portrait, and over the decades, it has become one of the most iconic images in U.S. currency, a lasting tribute to a president who guided the nation through its greatest crisis, the Civil War. Above Lincoln's head is the motto "In God We Trust," a phrase that has appeared on U.S. coins for generations. To the left of Lincoln's profile is the simple word liberty, a reminder of the fundamental American value that the nation was built upon. To the right is the date, 1983, marking the year of issue, and depending on where the coin was minted, you might also see a small mint mark, such as a D for Denver or an S for San Francisco, turning the coin over. The reverse of the 1983 cent features the Lincoln Memorial, a design first introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This reverse was designed by Frank Gasparo, the chief engraver of the United States Mint, and it shows the majestic neoclassical structure located in Washington, D.C., where visitors from around the world come to pay tribute to Lincoln. If you look closely at the reverse of a 1983 cent, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, making this one of the only U.S. coins where the same person is depicted on both sides. Above the memorial are the words United States of America, while below it we find the denomination, 1 cent. Between the two, just above the memorial, is the motto E pluribus unum, Latin for out of many, one, a reference to the unity of the states forming one nation. When it comes to the symbolism of the 1983 penny, it carries not just the legacy of Abraham Lincoln and the ideals of liberty and unity, but also the symbolism of change. It represents the United States Mint adapting to economic pressures, making difficult decisions about materials, and ushering in a new era of coinage. It symbolizes the balance between tradition and practicality, between holding onto the image of Lincoln while fundamentally altering the composition of the coin itself. And in the world of collecting, the 1983 penny symbolizes the thrill of the hunt, because collectors are constantly searching for those elusive rare examples, like the copper planchet error, which can transform a common coin into a life-changing discovery worth millions. And now, when we speak about the current value of the 1983 cent, it is important to distinguish between the ordinary versions and the extraordinary rarities. A typical 1983 penny struck on zinc, even in uncirculated condition, is worth only a few cents to perhaps $1 or $2 depending on grade. Millions upon millions of these were produced at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, making them common in everyday circulation. However, when we begin to explore the rare varieties, the story changes dramatically. The 1983 double die reverse, for example, is a famous error variety in which the lettering on the reverse shows strong doubling, particularly in the words 1 cent and United States of America. These coins can bring hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on condition. And then there is the ultimate prize, the 1983 copper cent, weighing 3.11 grams, a coin that should not exist, but does. This coin is so rare, so legendary, that its market value has been the subject of intense speculation, with some enthusiasts claiming that the ultimate specimen could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Indeed, in the mythology of numismatics, the idea of a 1983 cent being valued at $334 million is not entirely impossible, because we have seen time and again that the rarest coins, when they capture the imagination of collectors, can achieve astronomical prices that defy ordinary logic. And so, the 1983 penny becomes not just a coin, but a story. A story of economic forces that changed the very metal from which our coins are made. A story of design, of Abraham Lincoln's image enduring through more than a century of change. A story of hidden rarities, of a handful of copper coins that slipped through the mint's production lines like ghosts from another era. And a story of unimaginable value, of a small round piece of metal that could, in the right circumstances, be worth more than a skyscraper, more than a fleet of airplanes, more than entire fortunes. When we dive deeper into the world of the 1983 1-cent coin, it becomes clear that what might appear to be an ordinary piece of pocket change is actually layered with complexity, mystery, and intrigue. The year 1983 was one of transition and permanence all at once. It was the first full production year for the newly standardized copper-plated zinc cents, yet at the same time it carried forward the legacy of more than 70 years of Lincoln cents since 1909. Each detail of the coin tells us something not just about numismatics, but about America itself at that moment in history, and that is one of the reasons why collectors and historians alike are fascinated by it. Think about the weight for a moment. On paper, the 1983 cent is supposed to weigh 2.5 grams, a lightweight coin that reflects the cost-saving measures of the mint. But that number is more than just a statistic, it is a dividing line between two eras. Every time a collector places a 1983 penny on a scale, there is a twinge of anticipation. Will it read 2.5 grams, confirming it as one of the billions of ordinary zinc-based cents? Or will it tip the scale at 3.11 grams, revealing itself as one of the mythical copper survivors, a coin that should not exist but somehow slipped past quality control, carrying with it the DNA of a bygone era? That difference of just over half a gram carries with it a difference in value that leaps from fractions of a cent into millions upon millions of dollars. It is a reminder that in numismatics, the smallest details can carry the greatest significance, and it is why collectors weigh their coins with such reverence. The design, too, takes on an entirely new dimension when you consider it in the context of 1983. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln on the obverse is not just a profile, it is an enduring symbol of leadership, resilience, and unity. By 1983, Lincoln had been on the penny for 74 years, longer than any other president had graced any U.S. coin. His face had seen generations of Americans through wars, depressions, cultural revolutions, and the dawn of new technologies. That quiet, steadfast image of Lincoln remained a rock of continuity even as the very metal beneath it changed from solid copper to copper-plated zinc. It is almost poetic, as if Lincoln himself was standing guard over a time of change, reassuring Americans that while the composition may be different, the values he represented remained the same. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design carried its own layers of meaning. Introduced in 1959, it replaced the earlier wheat ears design that had graced pennies since 1909. By 1983, the Lincoln Memorial reverse had already been in circulation for nearly a quarter of a century, and it was as familiar to Americans as the Lincoln portrait itself. Millions of people had visited the real Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., standing before the massive statue of Lincoln seated in quiet dignity, and here on the coin was a miniature reflection of that experience. The tiny figure of Lincoln visible between the columns of the memorial is a detail that never fails to fascinate collectors, because it means that the 1983 cent is one of the very few coins in the world where the same individual appears twice on the same piece of currency. That small design choice connects the coin to its larger-than-life inspiration in a way that is both subtle and profound, but as much as the design and symbolism matter, the real allure of the 1983 penny lies in its mysteries, and one of the greatest of these is the question of how many copper cents were struck in that year. Officially, the answer is 0. The mint declared that all 1983 pennies were to be made of zinc cores with copper plating. And yet, examples have been found that are undeniably copper, weighing 3.11 grams, and verified by professional grading services as authentic. How did this happen? Theories abound. Some believe that leftover copper planchets from 1982 remained in the hoppers and were accidentally struck in 1983. Others speculate that these copper coins were struck deliberately by mint employees aware of their potential rarity. And still others wonder if the mint itself was experimenting with transitional compositions, striking a few copper coins to test equipment or to ensure consistency before committing fully to zinc. Whatever the truth may be, the existence of these 1983 copper cents transforms them into legends, the stuff of numismatic folklore, the kind of coin that makes collectors' hearts race and imaginations ignite. And then there is the story of the 1983 double die reverse, one of the most famous modern error coins. In this variety, the reverse side of the penny shows dramatic doubling in the inscriptions, particularly in the words United States of America and 1 cent. To the naked eye, this doubling looks like a ghostly echo of the letters, a kind of shadow text that seems to shimmer under the right light. Error coins like this occur when the die itself, the piece of metal used to strike the coin's design, is improperly manufactured or aligned, resulting in a doubled impression on every coin it strikes. For collectors, these varieties are treasures, not because they were intended, but because they were mistakes that slipped past quality control, leaving behind a small but spectacular subset of coins that are unlike any others. A 1983 double die reverse penny can sell for thousands of dollars, depending on condition, and it is one of the reasons why so many people comb through jars, rolls, and boxes of pennies, hoping to find that rare misprint hiding among the ordinary. But what truly sets the 1983 cent apart, and what fuels the claim of its astronomical value, is the mythology that has grown around it. In the coin collecting world, stories spread quickly, and legends take root even faster. The tale of a 1983 penny being worth $334 million may sound like an exaggeration, but it taps into something real, the idea that the rarest coins, when they become symbols of collecting itself, can reach valuations that defy ordinary logic. We have seen it before, with coins like the 1933 Double Eagle, which sold for over $7 million, or the 1794 Flowing Hair Silver Dollar, which sold for over $10 million. When coins reach that level, they cease to be mere currency and instead become artifacts of history, cultural icons, and status symbols for the world's wealthiest collectors. The 1983 cent, with its combination of historical significance, mysterious rarity, and the universal appeal of the penny itself, has all the ingredients necessary to reach that stratosphere of value. Imagine for a moment the journey of one of these rare 1983 copper cents. Perhaps it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, its planchet an accidental leftover from the previous year. It rolled down the production line, indistinguishable in appearance from its zinc counterparts, and fell into a bin with thousands of others. From there, it may have been shipped in a bag to a bank, distributed in rolls, and spent in everyday commerce. For years, it may have passed unnoticed from hand to hand, buying candy, being dropped in a piggy bank, or lying forgotten in a drawer. And then, decades later, someone curious enough to weigh their pennies discovers that this coin feels just a little heavier, tips the scale just a little higher, and suddenly, what was once a simple cent is revealed to be a fortune. That story, that possibility, is what drives collectors to keep searching, to keep hoping, to keep believing that one day they too might stumble upon the find of a lifetime. And this is where the market value of the 1983 penny becomes almost a philosophical question. What is value, after all? Is it the metal content of the coin, the intrinsic worth of copper or zinc? Is it the historical significance of Lincoln's portrait and the Lincoln Memorial reverse? Is it the rarity of errors and transitional planchets? Or is it the story itself, the legend that collectors tell, the myth of a coin that could be worth hundreds of millions? In truth, the value of the 1983 penny is all of these things combined. It is a physical object, yes, but it is also a story, a mystery, and a dream. And in the world of collecting, dreams often command the highest prices. When collectors speak about the allure of the 1983 penny, they are not merely speaking about a coin, they are speaking about a phenomenon, a moment in numismatic history that continues to echo across decades. Because what makes this 1 cent piece extraordinary is not only the physical coin itself, but the human response to it, the emotions it stirs, the excitement it generates, and the endless curiosity it inspires. It is this combination of tangible rarity and intangible mythology that creates a marketplace where stories become value, and where an object as small as a penny can carry a price tag of hundreds of millions of dollars. Error varieties play a massive role in this story. The doubled die reverse is the most well-known, but it is not the only anomaly tied to the 1983 penny. Collectors scour their coins not only for doubling, but also for off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, cuts, and misaligned dies. Every small variation becomes a point of fascination. Take an off-center strike, for example. This is when the coin blank is not properly seated in the press and the design is struck partially off the coin. A dramatic off-center strike on a 1983 penny can fetch hundreds of dollars or more, depending on the extent of the error. Then there are coins struck on foreign planchets, or on blanks intended for other denominations. Imagine a 1983 penny struck accidentally on a dime planchet, thinner and smaller but still bearing Lincoln's profile. These wrong planchet errors are spectacular finds, and when authenticated, they can bring thousands at auction. Every time one of these unique errors appears on the market, it breathes new life into the legend of the 1983 cent, reminding collectors that the ordinary can become extraordinary in the blink of an eye. But beyond the errors, there is a psychology to coin collecting that must be understood in order to fully appreciate why the 1983 penny could ever be considered worth $334 million. Collecting is not only about ownership, it is about pursuit. It is about the thrill of discovery, the joy of finding something that others overlooked, and the pride of holding history in your hand. Coins connect us to the past in a way that is deeply personal. When someone finds a rare 1983 copper cent, they are not just holding a piece of metal, they are holding a fragment of 1982 that slipped through the cracks, a survivor of a time when copper was being phased out, a piece of history that was never supposed to exist. That sense of forbidden rarity, of something created by mistake, only adds to its mystique. The market amplifies this psychology. Auction houses like Heritage Auctions or Stacksbauers thrive on stories like the 1983 penny. When a rare example crosses the block, the room buzzes with anticipation. Collectors from around the world tune in, placing bids not just for the coin itself, but for the bragging rights, the status, the legacy that comes with owning such a piece. Records are shattered, headlines are written, and suddenly the coin is not only a piece of currency but a cultural artifact. The value grows exponentially because it is no longer being measured against copper or zinc, it is being measured against fame, against prestige, against the desire of one person to outbid another in the pursuit of owning something that very few people on earth can ever possess. That is how a penny transcends its humble origins to become a multi-million-dollar treasure. Think about the stories of coins that have already reached such heights. The 1794 flowing hair silver dollar, believed to be the first silver dollar ever struck by the United States Mint, sold for over $10 million. The 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle, a coin shrouded in legal controversy and scarcity, sold for over $7 million and later resold for even more. These coins set precedents. They demonstrate that when history, rarity, and narrative converge, the value can reach into the stratosphere. The 1983 penny, with its role as the first full year of zinc cents, its connection to the legacy of Lincoln, its accidental copper survivors, and its famous double die reverse, has all the elements necessary to join that pantheon. And when we talk about a valuation of $334 million, we are really talking about the ultimate culmination of all these factors. Imagine, for example, a single 1983 copper cent discovered in pristine, untouched condition, uncirculated, perfectly struck, perhaps even with a double die reverse on top of its copper rarity. Imagine it surfacing not in the 1980s or 1990s, but today, in a market flooded with wealthy collectors, investors, and even institutions seeking cultural artifacts. In that scenario, bidding could spiral beyond imagination. Billionaires compete not only in yachts and art but also in rare collectibles, and when egos clash at that level, numbers lose their usual meaning. A coin that once bought a piece of gum could suddenly become a symbol of wealth and exclusivity worth hundreds of millions, because the person who owns it does not merely own a coin, they own the story, the legend, the artifact that headlines the next century of coin collecting. There is also something universal about the penny that makes its legend more powerful. Every American has held a penny. Every child has dropped them in fountains, pressed them into elongated souvenirs at tourist attractions, or lined them up on railroad tracks. The penny is the most common coin, the humblest denomination, and yet here it is, being elevated to unimaginable heights of value. That contrast between the ordinary and the extraordinary is part of its magic. It reminds us that greatness can be hidden in plain sight, that something dismissed as worthless can secretly hold infinite worth. And it is precisely this irony that makes people obsessed with the idea of checking their change jars, rolling their pennies, and weighing them one by one, hoping to strike gold in copper form. Collectors often say that coins are miniature history lessons you can hold in your hand. The 1983 penny teaches us about economics, reminding us of the rising cost of copper and the government's decision to change the composition of the coin. It teaches us about design, connecting Lincoln's enduring portrait to the nation's ideals of freedom and unity. It teaches us about errors and accidents, showing how even in the precision of minting, human and mechanical mistakes can create treasures. But more than anything, it teaches us about dreams. It teaches us that even the smallest object can carry the weight of legend, that even the most common coin can harbor the potential for unimaginable fortune. Consider also the journey of the coin market itself. In the early 1980s, coin collecting was already a popular hobby, but it has grown exponentially since then. The internet, online auctions, and global marketplaces have connected collectors in ways that were unimaginable before. A coin discovered in a small town in the Midwest can be sold to a collector in Asia within days. News of a rare find spreads instantly across social media, fueling excitement and driving prices higher. The 1983 penny has benefited enormously from this global connectivity. Every new discovery, every rare error that comes to light, adds to its legend and inflates its perceived value. And what about the symbolism of that $334 million price tag? It is more than just a number. It is a statement. It says that coins are not just money, they are culture, they are art, they are history, they are identity. It says that collectors are willing to invest not just in tangible assets, but in stories, in myths, in dreams. And in that sense, the 1983 penny becomes more than a coin. It becomes a symbol of the collecting world itself, a reminder that value is not fixed, but fluid, shaped by the stories we tell and the meanings we attach. When you begin to think about the cultural impact of the 1983 penny, you realize that it is more than just a collectible, more than a coin for specialists and dealers. It is seeped into the imagination of ordinary people. For many, it is the first coin they ever truly look at closely. Perhaps a YouTube video sparks their interest, or a newspaper headline about a penny worth millions captures their attention, and suddenly they are digging through jars and old boxes, examining coins they once ignored. The 1983 cent becomes a gateway into the world of numismatics, a humble piece of copper-colored metal that awakens curiosity, a teacher disguised as a trinket. In countless homes, families gather around kitchen tables, weighing pennies on small scales bought online, teaching children how to spot mint marks, how to read tiny details under magnifying glasses. What begins as a simple search for a fortune often transforms into something deeper, an appreciation of history, an awareness of craftsmanship, a sense of connection to the past. For the child who holds a 1983 penny and learns that it was minted decades before they were born, there is a spark of imagination, a realization that money is not just for spending, but for storytelling. This is how hobbies are born, how passions are passed from one generation to another, and the 1983 penny sits at the heart of countless such stories. Of course, not every penny is a treasure, and the vast majority of 1983 cents remain common, worn, circulated, and worth only face value. But that is precisely what gives the legend its power. Because when something is common, people dismiss it, overlook it, ignore it. And when suddenly they are told that one among billions might be worth $334 million, the imagination takes flight. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. It is the classic treasure hunt dynamic, the same excitement that drove people to pan for gold, to dig for buried treasure, to dream of hidden riches waiting to be uncovered. The 1983 penny carries that same thrill, but in a modern, everyday form, requiring nothing more than curiosity and a willingness to look closely. The reality of the market, of course, is shaped by authentication and grading. A rare coin cannot simply be declared valuable by the finder, it must pass through the scrutiny of experts. This is where organizations like the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Company, NGC, step in. When someone believes they have discovered a rare 1983 copper cent, the process of verification begins. The coin is weighed, its composition tested, its authenticity examined under microscopes by experts who have spent their lives studying the subtleties of minting. If it is genuine, if it truly weighs 3.11 grams and shows the signs of being struck on a copper planchet, then it becomes something extraordinary. The coin is placed in a protective holder, sealed with a grade that assesses not only its authenticity but its condition, and at that moment, its market value takes shape. Condition plays an enormous role in determining value. A heavily circulated 1983 copper cent, worn down from years of use, might still bring tens of thousands of dollars, but an uncirculated specimen, bright and gleaming as though it left the mint yesterday, could command hundreds of thousands, or in the legendary case of a perfectly preserved coin with additional errors, even millions. Collectors are obsessed with the smallest details, the sharpness of the strike, the brightness of the luster, the presence or absence of contact marks. Every tiny flaw can mean the difference between a fortune and a mere curiosity. That is why grading is not just technical, it is almost ritualistic, a ceremony that transforms an ordinary penny into a documented treasure. But what about the mythic $334 million value? Skeptics might scoff, pointing out that no coin has ever sold for such a sum. Yet believers counter with history. Who would have thought, decades ago, that a 1794 flowing hair silver dollar would break the $10 million mark, or that the 1933 double eagle would reach such dizzying heights? Value is not static. It evolves with markets, with demand, with the stories that coins tell. The 1983 cent has all the ingredients necessary for myth-making: rarity, controversy, beauty, symbolism, and accessibility. Anyone might have one. Anyone might discover it. And that accessibility means its story resonates far beyond the numismatic community. It captures the imagination of the general public, and when the public takes interest, values skyrocket. There is also the matter of timing. Imagine the right coin surfacing during a moment of economic boom, when billionaires are competing to outdo one another in the collectibles market. Imagine the right auction, with media coverage building the story into a frenzy, headlines proclaiming the discovery of the ultimate rarity. The psychological effect of such a moment could push bidding far beyond rational limits. For the ultra-wealthy, $334 million might not be a stretch if the coin offers not only a rare collectible but a chance at immortality, a chance to own the coin that symbolizes the very idea of hidden treasure in America. For them, the coin is not just an investment, it is a legacy, a way to be remembered forever, and that is what makes the 1983 penny unique. Unlike many ultra-rare coins that are almost impossible for the average person to encounter, the 1983 cent exists in the billions, scattered across the world, hiding among ordinary change. The idea that one of those billions could be the ultimate rarity transforms the act of checking pennies into a kind of modern-day treasure hunt. Stories circulate of people finding rare coins in pocket change, at flea markets, in old jars inherited from relatives. Each story adds fuel to the legend, convincing more people to look, to search, to hope. The coin becomes more than just a collectible, it becomes a cultural phenomenon, a shared dream that transcends class, age, and geography. The presence of Lincoln on the coin adds a layer of poetic symbolism to this dream. Lincoln himself rose from obscurity, from a log cabin in Kentucky to the presidency of the United States, carrying with him the ideals of equality, perseverance, and the triumph of the human spirit. How fitting it is, then, that a coin bearing his image would itself embody the journey from obscurity to greatness. Every time someone examines a 1983 penny, they are not just checking for weight or errors, they are connecting to the story of Lincoln, to the story of America, to the idea that greatness often begins in the humblest of places, and so, the legend continues to grow. Collectors write articles, filmmakers make documentaries, YouTubers create videos that reach millions of viewers. Each retelling of the story breathes new life into the coin, reinforcing its status as one of the most famous and desirable modern rarities. The myth of the $334 million penny may never be fully realized in a single sale, but its symbolic value is already priceless. For it represents more than money, it represents hope, imagination, and the timeless human desire to find treasure where others see only dust. When you begin to think about the cultural impact of the 1983 penny, you realize that it is more than just a collectible, more than a coin for specialists and dealers. It is seeped into the imagination of ordinary people. For many, it is the first coin they ever truly look at closely. Perhaps a YouTube video sparks their interest, or a newspaper headline about a penny worth millions captures their attention, and suddenly they are digging through jars and old boxes, examining coins they once ignored. The 1983 cent becomes a gateway into the world of numismatics, a humble piece of copper-colored metal that awakens curiosity, a teacher disguised as a trinket. In countless homes, families gather around kitchen tables, weighing pennies on small scales bought online, teaching children how to spot mint marks, how to read tiny details under magnifying glasses. What begins as a simple search for a fortune often transforms into something deeper: an appreciation of history, an awareness of craftsmanship, a sense of connection to the past. For the child who holds a 1983 penny and learns that it was minted decades before they were born, there is a spark of imagination, a realization that money is not just for spending, but for storytelling. This is how hobbies are born, how passions are passed from one generation to another, and the 1983 penny sits at the heart of countless such stories. Of course, not every penny is a treasure, and the vast majority of 1983 cents remain common, worn, circulated, and worth only face value. But that is precisely what gives the legend its power. Because when something is common, people dismiss it, overlook it, ignore it. And when suddenly they are told that one among billions might be worth $334 million, the imagination takes flight. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. It is the classic treasure hunt dynamic, the same excitement that drove people to pan for gold, to dig for buried treasure, to dream of hidden riches waiting to be uncovered. The 1983 penny carries that same thrill, but in a modern, everyday form, requiring nothing more than curiosity and a willingness to look closely. The reality of the market, of course, is shaped by authentication and grading. A rare coin cannot simply be declared valuable by the finder, it must pass through the scrutiny of experts. This is where organizations like the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Company, NGC, step in. When someone believes they have discovered a rare 1983 copper cent, the process of verification begins. The coin is weighed, its composition tested, its authenticity examined under microscopes by experts who have spent their lives studying the subtleties of minting. If it is genuine, if it truly weighs 3.11 grams and shows the signs of being struck on a copper planchet, then it becomes something extraordinary. The coin is placed in a protective holder, sealed with a grade that assesses not only its authenticity but its condition, and at that moment, its market value takes shape. Condition plays an enormous role in determining value. A heavily circulated 1983 copper cent, worn down from years of use, might still bring tens of thousands of dollars, but an uncirculated specimen, bright and gleaming as though it left the mint yesterday, could command hundreds of thousands, or in the legendary case of a perfectly preserved coin with additional errors, even millions. Collectors are obsessed with the smallest details, the sharpness of the strike, the brightness of the luster, the presence or absence of contact marks. Every tiny flaw can mean the difference between a fortune and a mere curiosity. That is why grading is not just technical, it is almost ritualistic, a ceremony that transforms an ordinary penny into a documented treasure. But what about the mythic $334 million value? Skeptics might scoff, pointing out that no coin has ever sold for such a sum. Yet believers counter with history. Who would have thought, decades ago, that a 1794 flowing hair silver dollar would break the $10 million mark, or that the 1933 double eagle would reach such dizzying heights? Value is not static. It evolves with markets, with demand, with the stories that coins tell. The 1983 cent has all the ingredients necessary for myth-making: rarity, controversy, beauty, symbolism, and accessibility. Anyone might have one. Anyone might discover it. And that accessibility means its story resonates far beyond the numismatic community. It captures the imagination of the general public, and when the public takes interest, values skyrocket. There is also the matter of timing. Imagine the right coin surfacing during a moment of economic boom, when billionaires are competing to outdo one another in the collectibles market. Imagine the right auction, with media coverage building the story into a frenzy, headlines proclaiming the discovery of the ultimate rarity. The psychological effect of such a moment could push bidding far beyond rational limits. For the ultra-wealthy, $334 million might not be a stretch if the coin offers not only a rare collectible but a chance at immortality, a chance to own the coin that symbolizes the very idea of hidden treasure in America. For them, the coin is not just an investment, it is a legacy, a way to be remembered forever, and that is what makes the 1983 penny unique. Unlike many ultra-rare coins that are almost impossible for the average person to encounter, the 1983 cent exists in the billions, scattered across the world, hiding among ordinary change. The idea that one of those billions could be the ultimate rarity transforms the act of checking pennies into a kind of modern-day treasure hunt. Stories circulate of people finding rare coins in pocket change, at flea markets, in old jars inherited from relatives. Each story adds fuel to the legend, convincing more people to look, to search, to hope. The coin becomes more than just a collectible, it becomes a cultural phenomenon, a shared dream that transcends class, age, and geography. The presence of Lincoln on the coin adds a layer of poetic symbolism to this dream. Lincoln himself rose from obscurity, from a log cabin in Kentucky to the presidency of the United States, carrying with him the ideals of equality, perseverance, and the triumph of the human spirit. How fitting it is, then, that a coin bearing his image would itself embody the journey from obscurity to greatness. Every time someone examines a 1983 penny, they are not just checking for weight or errors, they are connecting to the story of Lincoln, to the story of America, to the idea that greatness often begins in the humblest of places, and so, the legend continues to grow. Collectors write articles, filmmakers make documentaries, YouTubers create videos that reach millions of viewers. Each retelling of the story breathes new life into the coin, reinforcing its status as one of the most famous and desirable modern rarities. The myth of the $334 million penny may never be fully realized in a single sale, but its symbolic value is already priceless. For it represents more than money, it represents hope, imagination, and the timeless human desire to find treasure where others see only dust. When you think about the stories surrounding the 1983 penny, it is impossible to ignore the countless personal tales of discovery and disappointment that have become part of its mythology. For every individual who dreams of uncovering the copper rarity, there are hundreds who weigh their coins, feel the slight difference, and convince themselves they have struck gold only to learn later that what they hold is ordinary. Yet even in disappointment, there is something magical about that process, something transformative about paying attention to a coin that most people would have tossed aside without a second glance. Suddenly, a penny is no longer a penny. It is a mystery, a puzzle, a potential fortune waiting to be revealed. There are stories of elderly men in rural towns who spend their evenings hunched over magnifying glasses, sorting through jars of pennies they have saved for decades. There are tales of young collectors who discover an odd coin in their pocket change and rush to the internet, searching feverishly for answers, their imaginations running wild. Some people even bring their finds to local coin shops, their hands trembling as they place the penny on the counter, hoping to hear the magic words, "This is the one." More often than not, the coin is dismissed as common, but occasionally the dealer hesitates, examines it more closely, and the silence stretches long enough for hope to flare. That moment, the not knowing, the possibility, is what drives the legend of the 1983 cent. The media has only amplified these stories, fanning the flames of excitement with headlines designed to capture attention. Check your change, this penny could be worth millions. The 1983 coin that could make you rich overnight. Articles like these appear regularly, feeding into the public's fascination and keeping the legend alive. Television programs and documentaries on rare coins always find a way to feature the 1983 penny, highlighting its unusual transition from copper to zinc, its mysterious errors, and its incredible potential value. The internet, of course, has magnified everything. On YouTube, videos claiming to reveal the secrets of million-dollar pennies attract millions of views, spreading the story to audiences who might never have cared about coins before. Social media posts go viral when someone claims they've found a valuable coin, with pictures of pennies held up like lottery tickets. Whether true or not, these posts generate waves of enthusiasm that ripple across the world. But the hype is not only a modern phenomenon. Long before the internet, stories of rare coins spread by word of mouth, whispered among collectors at coin shows and printed in specialized newsletters. The 1983 penny was one of those coins that quickly rose to legendary status in numismatic circles. Collectors who understood the details of the composition change recognized immediately that transitional errors could exist. They began searching early, knowing that if one could be found, it would be extraordinarily valuable. And indeed, over time, discoveries were made. Pennies struck on copper planchets left over from 1982, pennies showing doubling errors, pennies with small flaws that turned them into treasures. Each discovery only fueled the hunt further, convincing others that they, too, could find something remarkable. What makes the 1983 penny particularly fascinating is the way it represents a turning point in the history of U.S. coinage. The change from copper to zinc was not just a minor technical adjustment, it was a fundamental shift, driven by the rising cost of materials and the economic realities of the early 1980s. The copper cent, once the standard, became too expensive to produce, and so the mint was forced to adapt. In that adaptation, errors slipped through, and those errors became legends. The very existence of the 1983 copper cent is a reminder that even in a highly controlled system, mistakes happen, and those mistakes can become the foundation of myths worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The idea of mistakes transforming into treasures carries a poetic resonance that resonates deeply with collectors. In a way, it mirrors human life itself. We make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes define us in surprising ways. For the mint, the 1983 copper cents were errors, accidents that should never have happened. Yet for collectors, they are miracles, objects of beauty and value precisely because they are flawed. That is why collectors cherish error coins so passionately. They are tangible proof that perfection is an illusion, and that even in a system designed for uniformity, uniqueness can emerge. Now consider the psychology of the market. Why would anyone pay hundreds of millions for a penny? The answer lies in scarcity, desire, and competition. Humans have always placed extraordinary value on objects that are rare and desirable, whether gemstones, paintings, or historical artifacts. Coins are no different. The rarer the coin, the more desirable it becomes, especially if it carries a compelling story. And the 1983 penny has one of the most compelling stories of all: a transition, an error, a legend of copper in a world of zinc. Combine that with the thrill of discovery, the possibility that anyone might find one in circulation, and you have the perfect recipe for obsession. Auction houses thrive on this obsession. Imagine the atmosphere when a 1983 copper cent crosses the block, the room filled with collectors and investors, the air electric with anticipation. The bidding begins modestly, perhaps in the hundreds of thousands, but quickly escalates as determined bidders drive the price higher and higher. The numbers flash on the screen, climbing past $1 million, past $10 million, past $100 million, until finally the hammer falls at a figure so staggering that it makes headlines around the world. This is how legends are born, not just in numismatic circles but in the public consciousness. The coin becomes not only a collectible but a cultural icon, a symbol of value itself. There are whispers of private collectors who already hold such coins, who guard them jealously, waiting for the right moment to reveal them to the world. Perhaps one sits in a safe, tucked away in the private vault of a billionaire who understands that timing is everything. Perhaps another rests in a small-town home, forgotten in a box of keepsakes, waiting to be rediscovered by a descendant who has no idea what treasure they hold. The possibilities are endless, and that uncertainty only deepens the allure of the 1983 penny. And what of those who dedicate their lives to the hunt? For some, searching for the 1983 penny becomes more than a hobby, it becomes a calling. They attend coin shows, scour estate sales, and buy bags of pennies by the pound, searching through thousands in hopes of finding just one anomaly. They invest in scales, magnifiers, reference books, and hours upon hours of patient searching. Some succeed, finding coins that bring them modest wealth and recognition. Others spend years without a single discovery, driven not by results but by the thrill of the chase. The 1983 penny, in this way, is not just a coin, it is a quest, a pursuit that demands dedication, persistence, and faith. The most remarkable thing is how a coin so small, so common, can inspire such passion. A penny is often dismissed, discarded, left on sidewalks, or tossed into fountains. Yet here we are, speaking of one penny as though it were a diamond, a relic of immeasurable worth. That is the power of story, the power of history, and the power of belief. It shows us that value is not inherent in metal or design, but in the meanings we attach to them. The 1983 penny is worth $334 million not simply because of its rarity, but because people believe in its story, because they are willing to fight for it, to dream about it, to assign to it a significance far beyond its physical form, and so, the legend endures. The 1983 penny continues to fascinate, to inspire, to provoke debates about value and meaning. It is at once a piece of history, a symbol of error, a cultural phenomenon, and a treasure waiting to be discovered. Whether or not anyone will ever truly sell one for hundreds of millions, the dream is already real, living in the hearts and minds of collectors around the world. As the story of the 1983 penny moves into the present day and beyond, it becomes impossible not to wonder what the future holds for this remarkable coin. If history has taught us anything, it is that rarity and myth only grow stronger with time. Coins that were once curiosities have become national treasures, and pieces dismissed as minor oddities have sold for record-breaking sums decades later. The 1983 penny is still relatively young in the grand scope of numismatics, barely 4 decades old, yet already it commands awe and speculation. Imagine what will happen when another 40 years pass, when the cent itself may no longer even exist in circulation, when future generations look back on pennies as artifacts of a bygone era. By then, the 1983 cent will not just be rare, it will be an irreplaceable link to a vanished world. The potential value of such a coin is not fixed. It is fluid, constantly shifting as markets evolve, as demand changes, as narratives take shape. Right now, the market imagines values in the hundreds of thousands, even millions, for the finest examples of rare 1983 copper cents. But the idea of $334 million is not fantasy, it is a projection of possibility, of what might happen when all the right conditions align. History has shown again and again that collectibles, whether art, sports memorabilia, or coins, can break through barriers once thought impossible. Who would have believed that a single baseball card could sell for millions, or that a single comic book could become worth more than houses, more than entire neighborhoods? And yet it has happened, time and again, proving that markets are driven not only by scarcity but by emotion, competition, and the desire for immortality. The technology of the future will only amplify this phenomenon. Already, we see how digital platforms, online auctions, and global connectivity have transformed numismatics from a niche hobby into a worldwide marketplace. A rare 1983 penny can appear on an auction site and attract bids from collectors in dozens of countries, each determined to claim a piece of the legend. In the years to come, innovations like blockchain will make provenance transparent and indisputable, allowing buyers to trace a coin's history with absolute certainty. Artificial intelligence will refine grading systems, eliminating disputes about condition and ensuring that every detail is captured with precision. These tools will not diminish the magic of the 1983 penny, they will enhance it, giving collectors greater confidence and pushing values ever higher. Imagine the first time a flawless 1983 copper cent is offered at auction in a fully authenticated, blockchain-certified, AI-graded holder. The event will not simply be a sale, it will be a spectacle, a global moment broadcast live, drawing millions of viewers. News outlets will cover it as though it were a championship game or a royal wedding. Social media will buzz with excitement, hashtags trending worldwide as people marvel at the idea that a penny could command hundreds of millions. And when the hammer finally falls, when the record is broken and the 1983 penny achieves a value once thought unimaginable, it will not just be a triumph for numismatics, it will be a cultural milestone, a reminder that stories and symbols can outweigh even gold. The cent itself may vanish in the decades to come. Already, discussions circulate in Congress about eliminating the penny, citing the cost of production and the inefficiency of keeping such a low denomination in circulation. If that day comes, if the penny is retired forever, the 1983 cent will instantly become more precious, a relic of the last generation of small change. Collectors will treasure it not only for its rarity but for what it represents, the end of an era, the closing chapter of a coin that served as the foundation of American commerce for over a century. And in that context, the 1983 copper era will be even more profound, a symbol of transition in a time of transition, a mistake that became a masterpiece. For the wealthy elite, owning such a coin will be more than an indulgence, it will be a statement. To purchase a 1983 penny for hundreds of millions is to declare not only financial power but cultural influence, to stake a claim in history. Just as art collectors compete for Picassos and Van Goghs, just as tech moguls bid on rockets and yachts, so too will the ultra-wealthy compete for the rarest of coins, with the 1983 cent at the pinnacle of their ambitions. In their hands, the coin will become a trophy, a symbol of status and permanence in a world where most things fade quickly. But beyond the billionaires, beyond the auction houses, the magic of the 1983 penny will always belong to the ordinary dreamer. It is the dreamer who checks their change, who digs through jars, who spends evenings at the kitchen table with a magnifying glass. It is the dreamer who believes that greatness can be hidden in plain sight, that a fortune might be waiting in the palm of their hand. And that, perhaps, is the true legacy of the 1983 penny. It reminds us that value is not always where we expect it to be, that treasures can hide in the most overlooked corners of life. It tells us that the smallest things, even something as humble as a penny, can change the world if we are willing to look closely enough. Future historians may one day write about the 1983 penny as we now write about ancient relics, as symbols of a culture, a people, and a time. They will marvel that something so small could inspire such passion, such obsession, such incredible sums of money. They will see it as a reflection of the human condition, of our endless search for meaning, of our desire to hold on to the past and invest in the future at the same time. The coin will be studied, photographed, and displayed in museums, its story told to children and scholars alike as an example of how myth and reality blend to create legend. And perhaps the most haunting thought of all is that, even now, somewhere out there, undiscovered 1983 copper cents still exist. They sit quietly in drawers, in jars of coins forgotten in closets, in the change boxes of old cars, waiting for someone to notice. They wait in silence, unrecognized, their full potential hidden until the moment they are found. And when that day comes, when the next great discovery shakes the numismatic world, the legend will grow even stronger, carrying the 1983 penny into another chapter of its extraordinary journey. As time moves forward, the 1983 penny continues to stand at the center of one of the greatest stories in numismatic history, a story that only grows richer with every passing decade. It is not just about a small coin made of copper or zinc, not just about an error or a change in composition, but about the way human beings invest meaning into objects, the way we create legends out of chance, and the way value is shaped not only by scarcity but by imagination. When you think about the 1983 penny, you realize you are not just thinking about metal, you are thinking about dreams, about the hunger to find something extraordinary in the ordinary, and about the deep human need to believe in hidden treasure. In many ways, the 1983 penny has already surpassed older legends. The 1933 double eagle is rare, yes, but it was created as a gold coin, already precious by its very nature, already destined to be valuable. The 1804 silver dollar is rare because of small mintage numbers, but it was struck with intention, made as a presentation piece, never truly circulated in the hands of ordinary people. The 1983 penny, however, is different. It was never meant to be rare. It was never meant to be precious. It was made in the billions, intended for the most mundane of uses, to sit in cash registers, to roll under car seats, to be tossed in wishing fountains. And yet, against all odds, it became legendary. That contrast, the transformation from worthless to priceless, is what elevates it beyond any other coin. It is the Cinderella of numismatics, a coin that rose from the dust of everyday life to sit on a throne of myth and desire. Think about the generations to come, living in a world where physical currency might no longer exist. Digital payments are already dominating commerce, and many children today will grow up barely touching coins at all. To them, pennies will be artifacts of the past, as strange and distant as ancient Roman coins are to us now. And in that future, the 1983 penny will not just be a collectible, it will be a relic, a key to understanding how people once lived, how economies once functioned, how mistakes at the mint became miracles for collectors. When physical money is gone, the rarity of the 1983 penny will take on a new dimension. It will not just be a coin. It will be a piece of history, a fragment of a vanished age, like a fossil that carries the memory of a world long gone, and yet, even in that distant world, the story of the 1983 penny will continue to inspire treasure hunters. People will still whisper about the one jar of coins left untouched in a family attic, the one safe deposit box that holds a forgotten treasure, the one undiscovered copper planchet penny waiting to surface. Stories will be told in classrooms, in documentaries, in museum exhibits, all circling around the same central theme, that the smallest things can sometimes hold the greatest worth. Children will press their faces to glass cases in museums, staring at the legendary 1983 penny on display, listening to guides explain how it once sold for hundreds of millions of dollars, how it once drove people to search their pockets with frantic hope. And in those young faces, wide-eyed with wonder, you will see the continuation of the legend. Collectors of the future will not simply be buyers, they will be curators of legacy. To own a 1983 penny will not just be to possess a coin, but to hold a story that stretches across centuries, a story of change, of error, of discovery, of human obsession. That story will make the coin more valuable than any sum of money could measure, because it represents something timeless, the human capacity to dream. Even as technology advances, even as currency becomes digital and value is tracked in blockchain ledgers rather than pocket change, the 1983 penny will remind us of a simpler truth, that treasure can be found where you least expect it. There will always be debates about its ultimate worth. Some will argue that no coin could ever truly be worth $334 million, that such valuations are more myth than reality. But others will insist that value is what people are willing to pay, and if billionaires are willing to compete for ownership, then any number is possible. And history supports that argument, because value is not fixed, it is a living, breathing thing that responds to culture, to passion, to competition. One day, when the right coin surfaces at the right time, when the right buyers are in the room and the cameras are rolling, the 1983 penny may indeed shatter all previous records, leaving behind every other collectible in its shadow. It is not difficult to imagine that moment. A grand auction hall, filled with anticipation, the coin presented under brilliant lights, the story told to a worldwide audience tuned in across televisions and live streams. The bidding begins, climbing quickly into millions, then tens of millions, then hundreds of millions. Gasps ripple through the crowd as the price climbs higher, fueled by determination, by ego, by the desire to own the most legendary coin of all. And then, at last, the hammer falls, and the world watches as a single penny sells for $334 million. Headlines blaze across every major outlet, documentaries are filmed, books are written, and the coin itself becomes immortalized, not only as an object of value but as a symbol of what humans will do for rarity, for history, for the dream of owning something unique. And after the sale, the story will not end, it will only deepen. The coin will carry with it the weight of that moment forever, each new owner adding another chapter to its history. It will be displayed at museums, loaned to exhibitions, shown at private gatherings, whispered about in circles of wealth and influence. The knowledge that such a thing exists, that such a price was paid, will inspire generations of new collectors, each one hoping to discover the next great rarity, the next legend. In this way, the 1983 penny will not just be a coin, it will be a catalyst, a spark that ignites the passions of countless people who might otherwise never have cared about numismatics. That is the true power of the 1983 penny. It is not simply the metal, not simply the minting, not simply the rarity. It is the story, the dream, the possibility. It is the idea that the most ordinary thing in your pocket could be worth more than entire empires, that treasure could be hiding in plain sight, that the line between worthless and priceless is thinner than we imagine. It teaches us that history is alive in our hands, that every coin carries a story, and that sometimes, those stories change the world. And as long as people continue to believe in treasure, as long as we continue to search, as long as we continue to dream, the 1983 penny will live on, its legend growing larger and brighter with every passing year. 100 years from now, the 1983 penny will not simply be remembered as a coin or even as a rare collectible, it will be remembered as a legend, a story that transcended its humble origins to become one of the defining symbols of American numismatics. Time has a way of polishing certain stories until they gleam brighter than the objects themselves, and the 1983 penny will be one of those stories. Historians will speak of it not merely as a coin struck during an era of transition, but as a cultural phenomenon, a piece of everyday life that became immortalized through rarity, myth, and human imagination. Children will sit in classrooms of the future, long after physical money has disappeared, and teachers will hold up an image of the 1983 penny on a screen, explaining how once upon a time, people used metal coins to buy their food, their clothes, their dreams. The children will marvel, shaking their heads in disbelief, wondering how such small tokens could carry value, and they will listen with fascination as the story unfolds, how a common penny became worth hundreds of millions, how ordinary people searched their pockets in hopes of finding one, how this tiny coin once captured the attention of an entire nation. And in that moment, the 1983 penny will serve not only as a story about money, but as a story about hope, about the way humans cling to the possibility that treasure might still be hiding in the most unlikely places. Collectors of the future will treat the 1983 penny with reverence, as though it were a sacred artifact. Museums will dedicate entire exhibits to its history, tracing the shift from copper to zinc, explaining the error, displaying authenticated examples under thick glass, with security guards watching carefully as visitors lean close to glimpse a piece of numismatic immortality. Digital holograms will project life-sized images of the coin, rotating in 3 dimensions, highlighting every detail of Lincoln's profile, every curve of the lettering, every subtle feature that makes it unique. And beside those displays, the story of the $334 million valuation will be told, engraved not in metal but in collective memory. For by then, the number will not matter so much as the myth itself, the knowledge that once, people believed in a penny worth more than castles, worth more than entire companies, worth more than anyone could have imagined. Folklore will grow around the coin. Just as people tell ghost stories around fires, so too will they tell stories of the legendary penny. Stories of men who discovered one and became rich overnight, of families who passed one down for generations as a secret heirloom, of lost coins still waiting to be found in jars, in safes, in forgotten corners of attics. These tales will not all be true, of course, but truth will not matter. The coin will become myth, and myth has always been more powerful than reality. The 1983 penny will become a symbol in literature, in art, in film. Writers will use it as a metaphor for hidden greatness, for the idea that the smallest things can carry unimaginable value. Painters will depict it gleaming against dark backgrounds, like a star against the night sky. Filmmakers will weave it into stories of treasure hunts, quests, and obsessions. In each retelling, the legend will grow larger, until the coin becomes something almost supernatural, a relic not of metal but of imagination itself. And in that future, when scholars look back at the 20th century and ask which objects defined American life, the 1983 penny will be near the top of the list. Not because it was the most beautiful coin ever struck, not because it was the rarest coin ever made, but because it carried within it the spirit of transformation. It was born in a moment when the nation shifted from one material to another, from copper to zinc, and in that shift lay both error and opportunity. The coin represents change, adaptation, and the strange truth that mistakes sometimes hold more value than perfection. It embodies the story of America itself, a nation built on reinvention, on the belief that anything, even something overlooked, can become extraordinary. One can imagine a future auction held centuries from now, where a 1983 penny is presented not simply as a collectible, but as a relic of a lost age. The crowd gathered will not be ordinary bidders but historians, billionaires, cultural institutions, each one desperate to secure for themselves the ultimate symbol of hidden treasure. The price may rise beyond numbers we can now imagine, not because of the metal, but because of the meaning. And when the hammer falls, when the coin is secured by the winning bid, the world will once again be reminded that legends never die, they only grow. Perhaps the most haunting part of the story is the thought that, even then, there may still be undiscovered examples waiting silently in the world. Imagine 100 years from now, a dusty box in an attic being opened by a descendant who knows nothing of coins, who stumbles upon an old jar of pennies untouched for generations. They pour the coins out, their eyes catching on one that looks no different from the rest, yet heavier, denser, glowing with the quiet power of copper. They do not know, at first, what they hold, but when they discover its story, when they realize that the legend has found its way into their hands, history will repeat itself. Hope will flare, excitement will spread, and the world will once again be captivated by the discovery of the ordinary made extraordinary. The 1983 penny is not just about numismatics, not just about collecting, not just about money. It is about belief. Belief that the smallest things matter, belief that history hides treasures, belief that dreams can come true if we are willing to look. And as long as humans carry that belief, the 1983 penny will never fade. It will live on in museums, in stories, in imaginations, in myths told around tables and across screens. It will become, in every sense, the Mona Lisa of American coinage, not because of its beauty, but because of the way it makes people feel. The way it transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. The way it whispers that treasure still exists, even in the palm of your hand. And so, as the story of the 1983 penny comes to its conclusion, we realize that this is more than the story of a coin. It is the story of time, of chance, of history, and of the human heart's endless search for meaning in the smallest of places. A single cent, struck in an ordinary year, destined at first for nothing more than vending machines, parking meters, and cash registers, rose above all expectation to become a symbol of hidden fortune. It reminds us that greatness does not always arrive with a trumpet's call or a king's crown. It sometimes hides in our pockets, waiting for the right eyes to see. The weight of the 1983 penny is not measured only in grams of copper or zinc, nor even in the staggering figure of $334 million. Its weight is measured in the countless moments of wonder it has created. In the faces of children searching through coin jars with hope. In the hands of collectors trembling as they hold history itself. In the imagination of a world that dared to believe that something so small could hold so much power. It is not merely currency, it is curiosity turned into legend. As the years pass, many objects will fade from memory. Technology will change, nations will change, even the concept of money itself will change. But the 1983 penny will remain. Not just as metal, but as story. Not just as artifact, but as inspiration. It will remind future generations that history is alive all around us, and that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are hiding in plain sight. Perhaps, as you listen to this, you might even reach into your pocket, or pull out an old box of coins, and let your eyes wander across the pennies inside. Perhaps you'll feel that spark of wonder, that whisper of possibility, that thrill that maybe, just maybe, the ordinary coin in your hand is not ordinary at all. And even if you never find one, even if the legendary 1983 penny never passes through your fingers, you will still have shared in its magic. Because the true treasure is not only in owning it, the treasure is in the story, in the hope, in the dream it carries. Of the 1983 penny began as just another coin. But it became a mirror of humanity's greatest truth, that value is not always in what we see, but in what we believe. And as long as belief exists, the story of this penny will never end. It will live forever, gleaming brighter with every telling, echoing across time as the little coin that became larger than life. And that, my friends, is the story of the 1983 penny, humble, powerful, eternal. The coin that began as a cent, but became a legend.